What's your sense of the current state of play? How do you think the Indians are poised at this moment, and what, according to you, is China's most likely response? Brahma.
Well, I think the capture of vacant heights in Chushul was a step in the right direction to buttress India's perception of the LAC and to prevent the PLA from grabbing more Indian territory. But India faces a difficult military situation because the Chinese have strengthened their hold on the land grabs that they made in April and May, and evicting them militarily is a difficult option for India. But the action of India since last weekend raises two questions. First, why didn't India take such proactive defensive steps when it first discovered the Chinese encroachments at the beginning of May?
What's your sense of why it didn't happen? Why is it taken all of June, July, August, 3 months for India to go in and make these moves?
4 months. It's been 4 months since the first encroachments were discovered. And because India did not take such proactive defensive steps, it led to newer Chinese encroachments, including in the Depsang Plateau. For example, the Depsang Bai Junction today is in Chinese control. Had we taken such steps earlier, the situation would have been much better. The second question that arises is that we have finally deployed the all-Tibetan Special Frontier Force against the PLA in the Chushul area. The Special Frontier Force was raised in the 1960s for action against China, but it has not seen any action against China all these decades because the Indian governments have kept the Special Frontier Force away from the LAC. Finally, they have been pressed into service. The question is, why didn't we use the Special Frontier Force earlier?
No, what's your answer to that question? You're raising good questions. As one of India's leading experts in China, what are your answers to them?
Well, the answer, India learns from mistakes, but learns slowly. Now, we have seen the valor of the Tibetan commandos of the Special Frontier Force. Their action forced the PLA unit that intruded into the southern side of the Pangong Lake to retreat. And one of the Special Frontier Force company commanders was martyred in the action. Another was wounded. But they have shown their courage. They have shown their ability to stand their ground. This is the kind of force that we need. In fact, local Himalayan people, whether they are Tibetans, Ladakhis, Himachalis, Sikkimese, and Arunachalis, they are best suited to safeguard the Himalayan border.
Now, you track China and what's happening in the mind of the PLA and the CMC leadership very closely. What's your best sense, Brahma, Chellaney, of how the Chinese are likely to respond? They are furious, statement after statement, levying a volley of charges against India. They're threatening retaliation. Is this a strong enough quid pro quo? Will the Chinese now be forced to realize their folly and pull back? Or do you believe that having come so far, to turn around with that tail between their legs and go back would be a loss of face, and therefore an escalation is more likely? How do you see the situation pan out? Brahma, Chellaney.
Well, first, the Chinese have achieved the territorial objectives that they set out to achieve when they made those incursions into Indian territories in April and May. So those territorial gains of China remain intact. In fact, they are consolidating those gains. What is new is that in one sector, in the Chushul sector, the Indians have taken on the PLA openly. So this poses a challenge for China, and especially I think even more humiliating for China is the fact that India pressed the all-Tibetan Special Frontier Force to take on the PLA, and that is really humiliating to China. But the overall picture still remains very favorable to China's aggression. The second point that we have to bear in mind when we consider how China might respond to the latest Indian action since last weekend, we should bear in mind that China has pursued an approach, a policy since the 1980s of committing aggression below the threshold of armed conflict without firing a single shot. That's how they have changed the status quo in multiple areas, including the South China Sea. And that's how they managed to grab territories in Ladakh since April. So now if they try to respond to India's latest actions by shedding that approach and waging military action, then the whole facade that they have created will be shattered. So for China, this is a serious dilemma that they face now, because the whole coercive approach has been based on tactics short of armed conflict.